Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. Thank you for listening. I'm Adam Huss, now officially Adam L. Huss, I guess, since that's the name I used on my book, Wine Liberated, coming out this November from Chelsea Green, but it's available for pre-order right now. I am coming to you from beautiful Spencer, New York. Something a little personal about me, I donate annually to Wikipedia. Why? Because I use it regularly and value it. Pretty simple. Of all the things I support in the course of the year that I wish I didn't have to, like oil companies when I buy pretty much anything, or Meta when I use Instagram or WhatsApp, I want to make sure to also tangibly support the things that I actually care about and want to remain a part of our world and continue to expand my knowledge and bring more quality to my life. So I donate to Wikipedia. I buy books from living authors. I shop at farmers markets, and wherever I go, I buy wine from local producers who strive to be beyond organic. If you enjoy and value this podcast, please consider supporting it. You can support this podcast by becoming a subscriber at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. You can also sponsor an episode. Just email me at connect@organicwinepodcast.com. Even just taking a literal minute to give a great review on your podcast app or in Substack, interacting some way, that helps a lot. Thank you so much to those of you who already have and continue to give to make this podcast possible. I've rejected the meaningless advertising model that many podcasts follow because I have no desire to contribute to more mindless consumerism. And I want this podcast to continue to be free of that kind of influence. If you share that value, subscribing to Beyond Organic Wine podcast can make another way possible. Thank you for your support. And subscribing also gives you access to all Beyond Organic Wine content, like this episode, for example, the second half of which is for subscribers only. I just got back from ABV in Brooklyn. I've known about ABV since its inception and have wanted to go since then. But this is the first one for which all the logistics of my life worked out, and I drove down from the Wine Forest Farm in beautiful Spencer, New York, and spent a day as a country slicker in the big city. If you haven't heard of ABV Ferments, ABV stands for anything but vinifera. And it's a traveling summit that is both educational and experiential and showcases native and hybrid grapes and local non-grape fermentables. It's about creating space for the wines and peoples who have been pushed to the margins by vinifera culture. It promotes social diversity to enhance biodiversity and biodiversity to enhance social diversity. And it was one of the inspirations for the Embracing Hybrid Grapes conference that Elodie Oliver and I do in California. And speaking of hybrid grapes in California, I've been trying to make some strong arguments on Beyond Organic Wine for why California needs hybrid grapes. Really, why everyone needs them. But this episode has given me another one for California specifically. California wine is becoming anachronistic. It's becoming a relic of a past era, outdated, falling behind. Part of why this is so is because it is relatively easy to grow the famous European vinifera varieties in many parts of California. But that has discouraged and disincentivized innovation and adaptation. California has prided itself in being a global leader and tastemaker, a land of innovation and cutting-edge thinking. But when it comes to wine, it is merely a follower. And as you'll hear from my guest on this episode, it is falling even further behind. California and the North American wine industry on the west side, generally, is now in the ironic position of getting new varieties of grapes from Europe once again, this time hybrids. And the irony is that we are buying back our own genetics. The genetics that make the new varieties of PIWIs and the French and Italian hybrids so resilient and easy to grow come most often from the rich genetic resource of the many North American native grape species. And now we're paying royalties on every vine that is coming back across the pond from Europe with North American genetics. I'm not trying to evoke nationalism or, I guess, continentalism or whatever. I'm trying to point out how silly it is to pay royalties and tariffs on something that we can find in our backyard. This is happening because it's too easy to let wine remain stagnant in Western North America, where 95% of the wine in North America comes from. And so virtually no grape breeding has taken place. But not only is California being left behind in terms of resilient genetics, but also in terms of flavors. How long will we go without challenging the idea that our handful of favorite vinifera varieties are the best flavors possible ever for all people? As traditional and conservative as European wine cultures can be, and I've heard they can be, They are moving forward much more quickly than California. The increasing difficulty of growing vinifera there, coupled with a need and more governmental directives to reduce the use of harmful pesticides in agriculture, are causing more and more European wine producers to see the folly and prejudice and begin embracing a dynamic future with new, resilient, and low-input grape varieties that result from the most ancient form of agricultural innovation, breeding or hybridization. This means that wine growers and producers in places like Germany, Bordeaux, Austria, Switzerland, Italy, and Catalonia are taking hybrid grapes as seriously as the old vinifera varieties. They are already learning how these new varieties need to be grown and made to produce excellent wine, while we in North America, on the west side at least, just wait for them, once again, to sell us this knowledge and the varieties that they will have decades of head start with in the market. When will we begin to grow our own wine culture in North America? When will we begin to value the incredibly deep and rich resource of the dozens of species of native grapes growing in our backyards? When will we realize the potential for uniqueness in the global market that our wines could have if we simply grew our own grapes? These are the questions that this episode begs us to ask. Also, bravo to the grape breeders and nurseries and wine producers in Europe who are setting an example for the rest of us to follow. Don't get me wrong, Europe has a long way to go in embracing hybrid grapes. And east of the Rocky Mountains of North America, hybrids are definitely percolating and have been for centuries. In fact, I'd say Midwestern and Eastern North America are really the places to go if you want to see the future of wine in America. Sam Doncaster is the Englishman I chat with on this episode, and he gives us a tour of what's happening from his perspective with hybrids, or really PIWIs, in Europe. A PIWI is a hybrid that was developed specifically for resistance to the mildews and fungi that parasitize grapevines. Sam gives us so many examples and resources that there will be a pretty rich link list on Substack for this episode. Enjoy. Sam, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate you coming on.
Yep, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself and where you are, and then continue on with your thoughts about what you were saying?
My name's Sam Doncaster, and I kind of work in grapevines in almost anywhere I can get work. But at the moment, I'm just doing a bit of family stuff in England. I'm English by birth, and so I've got family here. And it's the middle of summer, so it's quite nice where we are. But I'll have to return to Europe fairly soon and get on with the real world. Yeah. So I describe myself as a viticultural person. When I got into the industry, I was in New Zealand, and I was looking around for a change from what I was doing previously. I was actually managing a fish processing plant, sort of specializing in salmon products. I was doing a lot of smoked salmon and gravlax and things like that. And I really disliked being under neon lights and concrete floors all day and that sort of thing. I wanted to get out fresh air. So I turned to the wine industry, where the New Zealand wine industry is all very new. They have really good equipment. You can't buy secondhand stuff. Everything comes into the country, and it's specialist for the wine industry. They have very well-trained sort of winemaking kind of technical people. And I thought what they needed to think about was maybe how to grow grapes in a slightly better way. There's a lot of almost chemical farming, and they talked about being clean and green and everything natural and that sort of thing. But I thought that was being a little bit dishonest. So anyway, I went out and joined the viticultural world, and it's taken me many places, and I've met a lot of people and a lot of inspiring people, actually. There's just, I've done this for 25 years. So yeah, a lot has happened, but I'm in England at the moment. This is a holiday.
Nice. And you were saying about the, what's happening with grapes there, where you are is pretty far north, Sheffield area, and not necessarily easy to grow grapes because of the latitude. But are you further north than, like, what is do you know what the latitude is there? Do you know what the parallel is that you're
I don't.
near? Okay. We can always look it up.
Yeah, look it up. I mean, it's probably 47 or 48 or something. Is it 50? I want to know where 50 is. No, I can't. I can't. I really don't know.
Okay, it's all right. It's all right.
I think
But
it's
you were
quite,
talking about what's happening in the south of England there,
yes.
or is
Yeah, England. England's had something of like a just a small domestic wine industry, enthusiastic hobby people, not particularly well trained or well equipped or well funded, and they've kind of limped along for many years. And just in the last sort of, if I say 20 odd years, people have decided to tidy up the vineyards and have much better control of the growth and focus on getting varieties which were good for a specific purpose. And lo and behold, they make some really good sparkling wines, which are an excellent copy of what the French do with champagne.
right?
So that's good and well. Actually,
Yeah.
my personal interest is always towards still wines, but that's just because I'm getting old and cranky. But
Well,
England
what?
has got all these chalk layers of chalk, very similar to champagne, and things maybe are just a little bit warmer as well. But there's a lot of Pinot Noir being planted and Chardonnay, and when I say a lot, 2 or 3 million vines a year for the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow. Yeah,
So
that's unfortunate.
quite big names, quite big businesses, lots of contract growers, and. But I mean,
Yeah.
there are other vineyards which are making other wines as well. There's some very good soil in this country, and because it's highly populated, there's always been a lot of really good agriculture, and so the land is easily available. You've just got to go looking for something which is suitable for free draining, just on a hillside so that's above a frost pocket, above the mist line, and that sort of thing, and just a little gentle breeze. Free draining, rather calcareous soils. They're quite easy to find, and so vineyards could go in anywhere.
Wow. And they are, it sounds like.
Yes,
But it
yes, they
also
are.
sounds like they're a little more, maybe because it's a new industry there, that some people are planting more vines that aren't those traditional pure vinifera varieties. Like I know like a Saval Blanc just won the IWC, new producer award last year.
Oh yeah,
Like a sparkling Saval.
yeah.
And I know there's a few other people who have realized it's a lot easier to grow hybrid grapes or PIWIs or whatever you want. I mean, something that's resistant to all of the damp fungal issues there in England, and it's a lot easier to produce without chemicals if you're growing those kind of grapes there. Um, I mean, maybe it's not on the scale that all the Pinot and Chardonnay is, but I know several producers who are planting or have planted and are making wine from. So you have some experience with with PIWIs, which is what I want to get into. But how did you get to that? How did was it something that you were led to by virtue of stumbling across it while looking for jobs and just following jobs around, or did you start to like have your own values and see the need for these kind of vines in viticulture?
Um, I've got a British passport, and at a time when Britain was connected to Europe, going to Europe to work was a very simple thing to do. And established a vineyard in New Zealand after I'd been to Polytech and done a few things. And I'd also been to France and spent quite a few months working on organic vineyard, which really started to make me question about how organic production is fundamentally flawed. Because whilst they always tell you how they are going to be responsible and clean and green and that sort of thing, the really strange paradox is they use an awful lot of sprays to try and keep the vines free of fungal infections. They can't use the really sophisticated modern sprays, which are sort of systemic and get into the plant and grow with the plant. So they're only putting on sprays which are acting on the point of contact. And so when the vine grows, you've then got to immediately get another spray out. They're putting on a lot of sprays.
Yeah.
And it's not just the active ingredient in a fungicidal spray, which is possibly interesting. There's a whole lot of other compounds which are put into the spray to make the spray more effective. And the accumulation of all of these is economically madness, but it's also bad for compaction with the soil because you're always going up and down with the tractor with a heavy trailer on it with the weight of the water, the solution there, and they're putting on stuff which is either going to blow away in the wind and go across maybe a village or something like that, a schoolyard, or it's going to hit the target and the leaf is going to come off, it's going to go into the ground, it's going to wash into a water supply. I mean, ultimately, this is unsustainable. So it was from that I was beginning to think that there's too many paradoxes that I could live with. Lo and behold, by chance, one day I met a man called Valentin Blattner. Yeah, I was, I can't remember if I was chairman or president or whatever it was. In our local area of where I was in New Zealand, there's an association of growers, and we all kind of take turns to see who's going to be the person who holds meetings and starts debates and that sort of thing. And on one occasion, we had a meeting and there's this guy shuffling about, looking a bit uncomfortable at the back of it. But we finished our business and went straight to the bar. So I went over and said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And he said, "Look, I'm Valentine. I'm going to go fishing. Do you want to come fishing with me?" So I kind of looked at him and thought about that and sort of said, "Yeah, it's a good idea. Should we do that tomorrow?" And so we went fishing. And then I sort of got to know him a little bit. And he told me what he was doing. And I told him that I had an interest in learning about the grafting process. And he said, "Well, you're English. You've got a British passport. I know somebody in Germany who's really good. You should go and do a training with them." So I went and I landed in the center of this really dynamic sort of circle of PV interest, the nursery world in Germany. Yeah, that was quite a long time ago. I mean, I met Valentine, I think, in '97 or something like that.
Wow, it sounds like a fateful meeting.
Yeah.
So great. So when you landed there, like, what did you start learning, and what was that journey?
You mean at the nursery?
At the nursery, yeah. And is that where you still have connections?
Yes.
Can you talk about that nursery? Yeah.
Yes. Strong connections. It's a good place to be, and I go there quite frequently when they're really busy. I'm sort of kind of half retired, so I've got a few options. But when they're really busy, they maybe give me a call and say, "Can you come over and fit in with the team for a couple of months?" So I've actually got a flat in the village there, and I spend more and more time there. So we do lots of little things together, in the world of viticulture and like promotions in English in the UK and that sort of thing. So that's Volker and Marian Freitag. Volker's been a member of PV International for, 25 years or something. He's one of the, mainstays of the organization in that respect. And he, as a nursery person, he could see that there was going to be an interest from producers who are increasingly struggling with the classical viniferas. And so he put in, they've got about 12, I was just going to say 12 hectares. So call that 30 acres, if you like, of vineyard, which is largely given over to being a couple of rows of this and 4 or 5 rows of that, right across a range of varieties and different clonal sort of divisions, and including PV, as a source of budwood for their nurseries. So they get to see how the vines are growing. They get to harvest the fruit. They know where the fruit goes to. They get micro vinifications done. So they've got a big kind of, if I can use a term, also like an archive of older wines, which are these wines which come from single varieties or single clonal wines. And I mean, so that's quite fascinating to be in a place where they've got a lot of contacts in the industry and they kind of work around the seasons, 12 months a year, always involved with trying to seek out what could be seen as better and also with less chemicals.
Yeah.
They have classic varieties as well, but the PV, they have a lot of PV. And in Germany, this happens to be close to a kind of center of quite a lot of forms of research. And there's a local school of winemaking not far away, and there's a big international research station 16 miles away or something, and the rootstock evaluation and rootstock research place is 5 miles down the road. So there's a lot of things happening there. And Volker is involved with all of that. So great guy, really, really well placed, lovely guy, very well informed, fantastic contacts. And this is international with all the countries of Europe that do a little horse trading when they're moving material from one place to another.
And the nursery is called Rebschulfreitag, so it's named after him.
Yes, that's a family name,
Got it.
and Rebschul is just like a vine school in much the same way that we talk about a nursery for young children.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great. Got
or
it.
a preschool or something like that. Especially for grapevines.
Well, so how's your thinking changed since from the beginning? Like, what have you come to learn or see differently by working with these hybrids or these PIWIs? And I know we could clarify that term, hybrid, just being my term for an interspecific cross
Yes.
of any two or more different species, and PIWIs being that, but crossed specifically with the purpose of fungal resistance, so resisting the main viticultural fungi
Yes.
that parasitize vines. So PIWIs are, you can have hybrids for many different reasons: cold hardiness, short duration growth, phylloxera resistance, anything like that. But PIWIs are specifically focused on fungal resistance.
Yeah. True. And I mean the world of vine breeding is it's international, and everybody who's got problems can actually turn to breeding. I mean, in much the same way that you would look at growing maize or potatoes or wheat. They've all got fungal infections. They all have breeding programs, and this happens everywhere. The world of wine is a little bit sort of held. I can say held back because
I think that's
people are
fair.
very traditional.
Yeah.
But there are people who increasing numbers of people who are questioning this and just sort of saying we've got to look at things differently.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've still got a very high regard for the enormity of work that people have done over an extremely long period of time, making selections and understanding how to grow things and to get the fruit to give the best characters, in their region. And I mean, a good wine is a work of art.
Yeah.
It's way more than just luck, and it's a result of a very long time. So the classics are the classics with good reason, and actually there's a little bit of a problem for these new varieties because they just haven't had time to go through the selection processes to actually bring out the best in them. So when I come across one that is actually quite good, I find it very impressive. If I said to you that in Burgundy, just a simplification, there's been sort of like 200 families making 5 different tanks of wine every year for the last sort of 200 or 300 years. That's an awful lot of science if you put it all
Yeah.
together. And if you
Right.
find a block of PV which is like 15 years old and it's been handed down from father to son, but it's never really changed, it's still the same, the first area that was planted, they don't quite know what the best soil is, where to put it on the hillside and that thing, but they're still making really impressive wines out of it. You think, but that only right at the beginning of that Burgundy
Right.
story. How good are they
Right.
going to get in the next, say, 20 years? And
That's
then on
such a
from
great
there.
point. That's such a great point.
So
Yeah.
we do a lot of, if I say tastings, they're always evaluations of sort of, is this good enough? And lots of questions like, is the yield large enough? Is it suitable for business? What's the kind of style that it should be in? Does this work, or should it be fermented in a different way? And perhaps, why is it that Pinot Noir, you can make champagne, sparkling wines, at the same time you can make a barrel red wine. It's the same variety. Well, it's all that clonal selection, all those differences. And nobody knows what you can do with PV. You get a new variety, one person made an impressive wine out of it, and everyone just copies that. But nobody knows what
Right.
else they could do with it. It's the early days.
Early days. However, I mean, you bring up, I mean, that is a great point. I love that point. But I want to balance that against this idea that, you know, if we strive for the same thing that we've done with Pinot Noir, we're
Hmm.
going to end up with grapes that are maladapted in 200 years again. We're going to be clinging to the same varieties without changing them again. We'll just repeat the same mistakes. Like it, there is somehow we need to, we need to acknowledge that our varieties need to change regularly, and yet somehow learn to, make the best wine that we can with them. I don't know. Maybe that's more of a question to you. How would you see that balance? I mean, I see these reports coming out about, even, some of these really great fungal resistant varieties, like Sauvignon Gris and Mascaris, which, many people grow with zero sprays. Not many people. Some people grow with zero sprays, and many people grow with like one or two sprays in a season next to, something like Riesling and Blaufränkisch that, they're spraying 14 times.
Yeah.
And now, even those really resistant varieties, they're seeing, powdery mildew and things like that working their way around the resistance genetics. Like, you're getting some percentage of these vines in some areas that are really high pressure areas, starting to see fungal growth on them, like, now already. And it's, they've only been around a few years. And so if we try to keep those same vines for 200 years and perfect the vinification of the grapes, we're going to end up with Pinot Noir all over again. Like a variety that just needs to be sprayed 20 times in a season, in a wet season. If you're trying to grow organically. So, what do you think? How do we? I mean, what are the? How do we balance that?
Um, I'm going to say in a theoretical situation, it's actually very simple. And if I could describe many of the PVs that are put to use at the present times, these only have one effective gene. So it's got
Yeah.
one layer of defense that runs through them. I mean, they might
Right.
have 4 or 5 genes for 4 or 5 different fungal infections, but they've
Right.
still only got one layer, and the fungal infection is going to go through little bits of mutation every time it goes through its reproduction. And sooner or later, the fungal infection finds a way of getting around the resistance in the vine. So, what has to be done, and what a lot of people are doing a lot of work with at the moment, is to develop the wine grape type that's got multiple layers of resistance in it. So this is
Right.
getting massively complex because you might have whatever 4 or 5 um, areas that you want to put protection in, and then you've got to put multiple genes in to do that. But
Right.
there's breeding programs throughout Europe. There's a lot of people recognizing this should be done. Come the day that we really do get new varieties that are so multi-genetic that no form of fungal mutation can get around them, then you can say these vines are really resistant, and then you can relax. But
Yeah.
that's not likely to happen any day soon because it's such a huge amount of work. And I'll just go off on a tiny tangent here and throw in the rather provocative thought that actually gene editing is likely to get there quicker than breeding.
Mm. I.
However, the
Yeah.
result is effective, so maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. I'm. So I've thought about that too, and I love that you brought that up. I mean, I love provocative thoughts. Um, I'm I have some hesitations about it, not just because it's it's not something that you can accomplish through sexual reproduction, but because our objectives are so limited, and I worry that we have these, we have these desires as humans for a certain thing. Like, it's usually productivity, it's resilience, it's whatever in our crops. And if we edit specifically for that, like, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of what I'm seeing with gene editing now is just trying to keep Chardonnay and just add in a resistance gene to Chardonnay, for example.
Hmm.
So it's, instead of just saying like Chardonnay can go into the, can become a variety that fades into the past. Like, yes, we loved it. It served us well while it was around, but through sexual reproduction, we've come up with better grapes, period. Instead of saying that, it's like, no, now to keep Chardonnay alive and viable, we're going to splice in genes. And to me, that just is, it's like there's a kind of prejudice that's behind that. It's like saying that Chardonnay somehow is the best that we can ever achieve. And I just disagree with that as a premise. But also, I think that we're finding that we don't know as much as we think we do, and that these genes don't act in isolation, and they're sort of, it's sort of like you were talking about the sprays that people use. It's like, yeah, maybe what they, they always say like active ingredient on the on the ingredients labels of these chemical pesticides, but there's all of the, there's a whole pantheon of surfactants and whatever they are that actually help make that spray more effective and more penetrative or whatever it is. And I think we're learning that genes are like that as well, like that the alleles are working in concert with things that we don't understand yet in the genetic code to be effective. And that if you just isolate them, they become, they have effectiveness, they still work, but they don't have the same resistance and resilience in the genetic makeup of the plant. And so I just think there are unknowns that we will find out, that we don't know as much as we know, and that the plant needs a whole array of things that get transferred through sexual reproduction to be able to have its highest level of health. And the gene splicing,
Yeah,
just
possibly.
achieves our ends in a short-term way. but
Yeah.
We'll see, I guess. I mean, you might be right. Like, in a way, there are certain things like Pierce's disease, for example. Like, this is one of those that you guys are going to have to deal with pretty soon, I think, at least in Southern Europe, because it's there, and it's in crops that don't have any resistance genetics, like olives. And if you want to continue to grow olives in Italy and Spain, there might come a time where you're just going to have to use genetically modified olive trees that have some resistance to Pierce's disease, because otherwise there will be no more olives. There isn't like a way to breed in resistance through, because no olive trees have resistance to it. So I don't know, maybe like I think we should use science if we can, if it makes sense. But
Yes. It's a very tricky subject because it all takes so long and so
yeah,
much money and so much just
yeah,
dedication, really. I don't understand the kind of gene editing well enough to know what's going to happen next. But just supposing people got very good at it very quickly, it does open up a much faster path of trying to do something. And then after that, of course, there's going to be extensive field trials and sort of maybe the wine's a little bit different, but I mean, a good winemaker can sort of find a way of making something the consumer's happy with. I mean, the consumers will tolerate a lot of variation in the range of wines that are in the market. So if the old favorite gene gets something else put into it and it tastes slightly different, the winemaker will find a way of getting it into the market.
Are you seeing that in England? Do you see like PIWIs on the shelf, or any kind of, I think you mentioned you might have seen a Floreal.
Yes.
Holy, I have a black bear in my backyard right now.
Okay. One of those days.
Wow, that is a big bear. All right, I just had to let it know somebody was here.
Yeah.
Wow,
Good idea.
that is my first bear sighting here. Oh, okay.
You got a dustbin there?
I
You got a
do.
compost heap? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Something
No, I
brought
mean,
in.
he's just exploring. I don't know what he was doing. Just came up to sniff around. I mean, seeing one in the middle of the day is kind of
Yeah.
unusual.
Do you think maybe it's
Well, okay.
Has it got cubs?
No, it looks solitary. I don't even know if it's a mama. It might be a guy.
Just kind of hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, roaming around. Yeah, it is it's a little worrisome that it's so ballsy that it's just checking things out in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Right up next to the house. I took a walk this morning, and I just read this article about cougars, in these different, high population areas in California. And they're like,
Yeah.
look, they know where you are. Like, they know as soon as you step into the forest, they know you're there, and
Yeah.
they avoid you. And so, and I was taking this hike, and I was like, I've never seen a bear, in like years of hiking this thing. I've never seen a bear, and they probably hear me and go running because they're trying to keep their distance. And sure enough, doesn't look too scared of me, honestly. Not trying to keep his distance from the house, that's for sure. Anyway, fun interruption.
Hmm. We
Uh,
don't have those here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
I
yeah. So
apologize. Yeah, I was asking about like you mentioned L'Oreal and on the shelf there, and anything else like that.
yeah, there's a few, and one of the things which can be done with PV is that they can help reduce uh, probably expenses, chemicals, and so on and so forth. Um, you can't reduce them to zero, but you can reduce it a little bit, by using the sort of new varieties in various blends. So there's more and more wines turning up which have got a 30-40% of one of the PVs in it. And the wines that come into the UK come mainly from Italy, northern Italy, and then there's a few of them that come in from France. Having said that, England, it should be recognised, even though it has a bit of a wine producing industry, 99% of the stuff that gets consumed here has been brought in from somewhere else. And it's always been like that. And so there's very strong trading connections with any winemaking region in the world.
Right.
I mean that, whether it be, Australia, California, or France, it doesn't make any
Yep.
difference. Just send the wines over if the price,
Right.
they'll take it. And so these, but within a domestic market situation, right across Europe, most countries have got a PV vine breeding program in action now, possibly a state one, possibly a private one, but nearly all the countries do have an interest. I mean, it has been said that the powers that be in the European Union, they recognise that vines are the largest source of forms of pollution coming from growing a horticultural crop. There's more chemical activity involving around vines than any other crop.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
people have said, well, this is going to have to change.
Yeah.
And, politicians being politicians where they've fundamentally missed the point so many times, people will say, well, let's start with reducing sprays by 50%. Well, of course, you can't do that because no one sprays for fun.
Right.
People have already got their spray regime down to a minimum. It's costing them a lot of money, and it's doing things they don't really always want to approve of, so that they're only putting on the minimum amount anyhow. So for a politician to say reduce it by 50%, I mean, they're missing the point. However, the only way to actually really do that is to either grow PV or grow PV and put it into a blend. And that's happening more and more across Europe,
Yep.
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll see what happens next. And, I mean, they're traditional consumers, but, everything evolves. We're subjected in our modern day life to marketing things which 20 years ago you just think, well, we just didn't have that. And yet now we have to learn to make the best of all these new things in the supermarkets, or do a little traveling go on holiday and read a menu in a language you've never heard of, eat foods you've got no idea what it is. We live and learn. And,
Yeah.
there's a big future for PV because there's another generation coming through and they will accept them
Yeah.
fairly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you made. Yeah. That's. I agree. I mean, that's what I'm finding as well.
Yeah.
And yet, I mean, you've said that you still hear people say that the traditional is better, despite all of these. Despite
Yes.
all of these great arguments you've made for why why things need to change. What I mean, what do you make of that? This I guess unwillingness to adapt, or just unwillingness to give up the what people consider
Um,
traditional.
well, we can't sort of accommodate or tolerate everybody in the world, and the people that irritate you, just quietly ignore them and let them go away somewhere. It doesn't really matter. The time is going to show what happens. How many people said if I say 10, 15 years ago, these electric cars, they're never really going to take off, are they? And yet you now
No.
look at it and they're accepted. And there's even councils in different places that say, well, you can only come into our city centre if you've got an electric car.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, really, if we had this discussion 40 years ago, it would be just an academic sort of concept. Of course, there were some forms of electric vehicles, but not many. But the more any form of technology is put to use, the more money goes back into further refining the research, the better they get. And it just is an exponential, sort of rise in acceptance. And we haven't got anywhere near that yet with PV. But I'm just going to say, yeah, it's just going to happen. I'm not sure when, sometime 10 years, 20 years, but it's going to happen. How can it not?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it sounds like it really is starting to percolate and bubble, and that the acceptance might end up being exponential over the next few years because it just takes that little foothold in a market where people get to finally get exposed to them, and they become more prevalent, they become cheaper. I mean, like, they end up being these affordable wines because there's lower cost to produce them, and they're environmentally friendly as well, ecologically integrated grapes that don't have to be sprayed as much, if
Yeah.
and yeah, and I mean, it just seems like there will be I've just heard the figure that 10% of new plantings in Germany are these PIWIs.
Yeah. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, I'm curious about
Maybe,
that as well. What are you finding?
well, Germany has more than anywhere else. That is true. And it could be that in terms of plantings year by year in the last sort of 6 to 8 years, it has been about 10%. But there's still a lot of old vineyards out there, which are the traditional varieties. So
Right.
the amount of
Yeah, I think it's of
the
like
percentage of vineyards that are producing PV vine is probably more like 3.6 or 7.
right. I think this figure is about, maybe it was just last year, like if you take 100% of just the new planting. So maybe
Yeah,
that's not a huge
yeah.
area because it's, nobody's really planting that much right now. but of whatever new is planted, 10% of that was peewees. So yeah, I imagine it's not a huge figure. But
So, I mean, there's lots of influences in the international wine sort of business. And one of them is in the UK, there's a very strong organization which has got a lot of international kind of connections, the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. And they spend a lot of time talking about ways and means to identify the classical varieties, the world's best regions of production, and what is essentially traditional old style wine.
yes.
They haven't really woken up to some of these changes. They need to sort of give it a bit of time so that they can actually see that something's happening. On the
I'm laughing.
on the other
I,
hand, in
yeah,
terms
yeah.
of things like vine breedings, I say that lots of countries have got breeding programs. When you do crossings with flowers, you can end up with 100,000 seeds which you plant out in the first year nursery, and they never get sprayed, and most of them die off. But you walk down in the autumn and you find the ones that are looking vibrant green, and you think that's a winner. I'll hold on to that one plant. Well, when you do that with 100,000 vines, you actually end up with quite a lot of them. So you replant those little ones into a slightly more denser block because all around them there's dead vines and things. And then the next year, perhaps the climate's changed a bit and there's other fungal infections that come in and you lose a whole lot more, but you still find the resistant ones where possibly you can test them, gene marking, and then you find they're multi-resistant. And not surprising, they're super clean because there isn't going to be a fungus that's going to get onto them. And then you can sort of plant out a mother block of just these vines and get them to grow and then start assessing what the qualities of the grapes are. And now I can say that there's blocks like this with these mother vines that have got these selections in them, which are all multi-resistant, that are 2,000 vines or 3,000 vines or 5,000 vines. Every one of those has the potential to go on to do something really interesting. And this is happening in every country in Europe. So it's not far away when someone is going to say, I'm a little bit fed up with battling against the problems with money and chemicals and adverse marketing sort of positioning. I'm just going to stick my neck out and plant new ones because I know it's going to make a good wine and I'm going to make money. This is business. And I know
Yeah.
two brothers in Bordeaux who got something like 400 hectare, so whatever that is, 1,000 acres or something. Bordeaux, makes good wine and all of that. Well, they went out and planted thousands of these new varieties, and they make something like 50,000 bottles a year from these new varieties, which of course they cannot sell as Bordeaux, but they've got marketing contacts all around the world, and they've got a market for those wines, and they're going
Yeah.
out and doing this. There's more and more people in France doing this kind of thing. And when I say people like the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, they have to recognize that this is happening. There's
Yeah.
two young brothers there who, in France, who are selling huge numbers of PV wines into New York. I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of bottles a year, or that sort of thing, into New York.
Do you know
So,
what the what it's called or what their names
oh,
are?
I'll have to think about that and send you an email, I think.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
but these things are happening, and
Yeah.
I can tell you that I have seen physically in Spain, in Austria, in the Czech Republic, in Italy, in France, in Germany, and even cool climate stuff. There's a partnership with a German research group with Denmark. How far north is that? They're looking at super cool climate tolerant varieties that they can grow without spraying. They don't, I mean, even Sweden's getting vineyards planted now.
Yeah. I've had some really delicious Danish Solaris actually.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
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 And I laughed when you were talking about the Wine and Spirits Education Trust because I literally say that exact thing in the book that I just wrote.
Okay.
That's coming out this fall. I had a whole section where I just talk about like how this part of the history of viticulture, because it really is now a big chunk of the history of viticulture, is just the idea that we cross grapes to create more resistance things, whether it was phylloxera, whether it was the early French American hybrids or whatever. Those things aren't talked about at all by WSET. And it's now, I mean, those are just historical facts and had a huge influence on the wine industry. And still, like I said, those genetics are still part of what's happening now. So
Yeah.
yeah, for them to just ignore it, it's just like, it's clearly serving a purpose. It's like, I mean, I don't know if it's serving a purpose, but it's serving a narrative that excludes things that are not part of, it's creating a definition of traditional that I think is no longer sustainable. And it needs to, I mean, I would love to work with anybody. I would love to work with, the developing a hybrid or PIWI or whatever interspecific cross, just a native variety, native species element of the Wine and Spirits Education Trust curriculum, because it needs to be there. It's like it's just really ignoring a huge chunk of what's happening in the world, as well as what has happened for the last 200 years. So yeah, that's why I was laughing.
Yeah, one thing's for certain, we're looking at a period of change. And
Yes.
when there's change, there's opportunity. The question is, who's going to rise to that challenge and who's going to create the opportunity and who's going to run with it and make it happen. But I
Yeah.
mean, whether it be wheat or potatoes or maize, I mean, people are doing crossings all the time for
Yep.
very obvious and logical reasons. But there is a traditional element in the wine industry, and I mean, I can see that's how things work. The wealthy set up systems to protect the wealthy. Is how we live, and the big vineyard and Champagne or Bordeaux or whatever. You probably get the same in California. People will do whatever it takes to make sure they're still at the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I'm, yeah, I hear that.
So
Well,
this is where I found it interesting when I met these two brothers in Bordeaux, and they said, "Well, we've got 400 hectare of vines, and we want to see a change." because I knew it was going to be different. That was a long time ago. I was doing a vintage in that area. Oh God, 2012, I think. And there's now Valentine has been in quite a few YouTube interviews and things, and I think there is one where he's with these people in Bordeaux, and
Okay.
they've done various bits of work like that as well.
Yeah, I just finally got to interview Valentine this year, and just put out that episode like a month ago. So, and it was lovely. And funny thing that he said, it just occurs to me, he actually thinks it's quicker to just do sexual reproduction than gene editing. Like he's like, I can do it faster. You'll have to talk to him. I'm not sure that I could explain why he's saying that, but
Okay, yeah, interesting comment. That you actually
yeah,
look at the most recent finds, which are arguably a commercial success, and look at when they were bred, and it's quite a few years ago. I mean, it takes 20 odd years to be able to do a
yeah,
crossing and then make it commercial reality.
yes,
The
yeah,
thing is
no, for
about
sure.
technical things like gene editing is that they're getting better at it, and it will be very quick when they really get going. And
Yes,
that's going to come to us, closer and closer, sooner and sooner.
yeah.
So
Um,
breeding has to take a long time.
well, can you talk a little bit about the work that is done there in Germany that you've been participating in, and just let's talk about some of the varieties and everything. I just love to get a picture of what that work is like, what you're doing there, what how many people are involved with. Well, that's it for now. If you are not a paid subscriber, if you'd like to become a paid subscriber to get full access to this and all the content at Beyond Organic Wine, you can easily do that at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. Thank you so much. And here's a little music from Colden Pro. A big thanks to him for this.